stopped screaming when she realized that her husband had adopted her. Her family didn't accept her as she was. Going to adopt, she was depressed day and night. But there were several life-changing issues in her life's goals. Adoptive mom Amanda Kick tells her family's story of adopting 2 children with special needs from South Africa, where Holt had just launched our newest adoption program. My husband and I were on our first date when I explicitly asked if he would be comfortable with adoption as a way to start a family. I had adoption in my heart for years, and I knew I didn't want to give up. There is a deep beauty in biological children though. I just knew I wanted to be a parent. Children who were waiting. Thankfully, my now husband was totally on board. We first went to our agency and found out we were too young for many countries, too poor, or BMI was too high for others. Country and the culture of their birth. Then we learned that South Africa actually has a waiting list of children who are fully eligible for adoption who have long waited for international adoptive families. We had to ask ourselves hard questions, like, are we asking this child to do something for us, or are we asking them to fully enter our family? We realized it wasn't about us and it was really about these children. It was a slow process of removing the layers of our desires. We had to ask ourselves hard questions. For example, are we asking this child to do something for us, or are we asking them to come fully into our family? Made us realize that it wasn't about us and it was actually about these children. We saw our son in waiting. The list a few months after our file. Went to South Africa. He was 6 years old with possible hearing loss and cerebral palsy. He was on the waiting list for months. I saw a picture of him every single day for months on end, where we checked for CPE. A list of special needs that we would be open to. We thought it was too complicated for our family. It wasn't until we saw the video of him walking down the hall and smiling that we realized we had been grossly misinformed about CPE. We picked up Ben and thought, okay, so he's deaf. It's no big deal. We'll just learn sign language and sign up for a 10-week course. We had coffee with a friend who grew up with a deaf brother and asked if she thought we could do it, although secretly we had already made up our minds. She lovingly told us that we were in for a tough ride and shared the difficult realities of being hearing parents to a deaf child. We met Ben when he first knew about 15 signs, and we knew about 50. The first few days were full of tantrums, as we took in our screaming, crying, biting, kicking and spitting out a baby from a mall in South Africa. Someone actually stopped and asked if it was us. Found a lost baby. But I think it saved us. For the first few years, we went through trauma training. We had to remind ourselves that Ben couldn't express himself, and he had no words. He hadn't learned sign language yet, so all he knew for 6 years was to physically use his body to express himself. Imagine not being able to tell someone that your tummy hurts, or you're cold, or you don't want to wear red shoes. We have failed over and over again today, but we had to learn a lot of patience. We had to learn the brain, and you can't argue with trauma now. Ben had to adjust first before we was able to reason with him. It took time and practice. He's almost 10 today, and he has the language of a 3-year-old. We're still signing and doing ours. It's best to speak freely. He still has tantrums, but they are much less frequent. We keep learning that his brain is not set up like ours, so his behavior can't explain how we do. Sometimes it happens in public and with us. We have to learn to brush it off because the traumatized brain needs time and space to regulate. We got a front row seat too. Watching our son go from not even understanding what the question is to being able to tell time, reminding me that he takes the bus on Mondays and he asks if he can have pizza for dinner. It's nice to watch him learn new words all the time. A year after Ben came home, we were picked up with his sister Hattie. We quickly returned to South Africa, this time for a 2-year-old girl who we were told was born without a cerebellum, a brain and inability to walk, smile, communicate or sit up on her own. How in the world have we gone 2 years away from wanting a healthy, perfect, a baby for a baby that will need lifelong care and therapy that I have no idea about? I think God just slowly backed away layers and forced us to turn to our selfish desires. These children owe us nothing. We owe them our unconditional love. We asked ourselves if we could change diapers for the rest of our lives, and we couldn't think of a reason why we couldn't. We're a family of homebodies. We like a leisurely schedule. We don't like being on the road. We couldn't help but admit that we're a really good fit for a child with special needs. When we met Hattie as opposed to Ben, our affection was not instantaneous. It was terrible. Our bond with Ben was instant and brutal, but Hattie's needs were big and frightening. She screamed for hours of the day. Her sensory needs meant hitting her head on any hard surface, and she sucked her thumb until it was raw and cut. We went to a restaurant in South Africa and realized there was no wheelchair ramp. We definitely had moments of panic as we wondered what we had just done. Luckily, we had experienced foster families who let us know that it's perfectly normal for attachments to take time. I didn't fall in love with mine spouse in a day, that's the way it was. Okay, if I didn't fall in love with my child in one day, They encouraged us to take small steps every day to attach. No step was too small or silly for me. I bought her new clothes. It sounds ridiculous, but I wanted to buy her new outfits and try them on her. We did that to strengthen our bond. We worked on her hair, trying new products and styles. We threw away our bathing suits and took a bath together. We did everything we could to strengthen our bond. I followed my intuition. I found myself making homemade mashed potatoes for her, which helped me develop an attachment. In retrospect, it makes sense. Mothers and fathers care for their children. Every need is in the beginning, and it forms a bond. So that's exactly what we did. We took care of her as best we could. Sometimes she would scream and clap. We rode in the car with her head and cried silently. We went to our court date and just trusted God that our affection would come in time. And boy, did it come. I wish I had known all along. It's okay when things don't come instantly. You can warn the version. You lost your family when you had your baby. I wish everyone knew that. Children with special needs are children who were born addicted, have physical or mental disabilities, are older, and are not welcome newborns. Children with special needs are wonderful, sweet, and need you just as much as you need them. Fostering or adopting was always going to happen. That would be something we would do. Because of my husband and his sister were both foster and my late brother was adopted. It was our way of giving back. However, we never planned it. After finding out I was infertile and after 9 years of unsuccessful fertility treatments, we knew it was time to stop going down that road and walk away. Back to the decision to adopt or adopt. They all brought something that touched my heart and gave me the strength to get up in the morning. If any of them were not in my life, I doubt I would be as good a parent to the others. Each of them made me smile at some point when the other was breaking my heart. Now that we are home, we are always learning something new. We learn about the resources available to us for raising 2 children with developmental disabilities. We bought a wheelchair van and installed a ramp in our garage. We tried therapy and gave up therapy. We went to places inaccessible to our children. It's quite fitting, so we found new places. All you can do is accept it. One day and one step at a time. As parents, we have to abide by ours. Mental health under control and make sure all of our energy does not go to our children to the detriment of our own health. Trust me, there is no difference between the two. Your own child and your adopted child. Before we adopted, I wondered if it was supposed to be the same thing. But the moment she arrived, there was no other thought. You will just love this child as your own. Even the child will behave just like you. And will be very much like you in many aspects. So, if you're thinking at all, adoption, just do it. It's a beautiful thing. So well, this question is very a common and natural problem. Ask any adoptive parent, family about how they feel about their children, and you will hear a unanimous answer. Loving an adopted child is the same as loving any other child. Period. By focusing on the adopted child's relationship with the adoptive parents, we are completely missing out on what we experienced before we were adopted. Every adoptee has been abandoned, orphaned, and even, in some cases, trafficked. Any one of these events is traumatic. Any one of them leaves us with the realization that no love can be as reliable, that we can never lose it. A few weeks before the trial, when your child is still in their care, home, or an orphanage, is not the time to form opinions about your parenting or your child. Your child is grieving the loss. All they know and love, and it can show in many behaviors. The people who love and care for them, they are grieving for them too.